Hello and welcome to your Twitter Bootstrap tutorial. Now you may be wondering, what the hell is Twitter Bootstrap? And I don't blame you for wondering that. I used to wonder the same thing, but Bootstrap is the most popular framework to make websites with on the entire internet. It's actually 1%, and it's actually, the number might have risen to around 2% of the entire internet right now. That's a tremendous amount. A lot of people use it, and it was made by the people who made Twitter, which is why they're such geniuses. Of course, they didn't really know it was going to become what it is now, but that's okay. Nobody really does. All right, so let's get started with Bootstrap so you can see how great it is. So the first thing you're going to do is go to getbootstrap.com. Not going to include this URL in the information. It's really easy to follow. So getbootstrap.com. Okay, and what we want to do is we want to download Bootstrap, but I wouldn't quite click this link. What I'm going to have you do instead is go to the Getting Started tab in Stop. Okay, and if you just hit download Bootstrap, it would give you the whole thing. We don't need the whole thing. We just need the minified portion. So let's go to this part here and download this piece. Now this is going to download a zip file, which you can open in a number of different ways. I'm on a Mac, so it's going to open automatically for me. Yay! Okay, and you're going to see 3 folders in your Bootstrap zip file. You're going to need all of these. So take the folder and go ahead and copy it onto your desktop. Close that. Let's go ahead and see what's in here. So in your Bootstrap folder, you're going to see CSS, fonts, and JavaScript. These are the minimum amount of files that Bootstrap needs to run, and you're going to need all of them, and we'll reference them into your project in a little bit. So, all right. So the rest of this Getting Started page has actually a lot of kind of useless stuff, really. So what we're going to do is we're just going to look at a starter template. Let's go right here. This says Bootstrap starter template. Way to quickly start any new project, but yada yada yada. Of course, what do you do with this? And Bootstrap's great, they're very clever, so what you actually do is you inspect the source code. And this is now what you need. So you can actually, I'm in Chrome, but you can find this in another place too. We're going to go to the elements here, and we're going to look at the source code for Bootstrap. Now you'll notice quite a bit in the head section of the file. That's because Bootstrap needs to, in the head section, it needs to import all of the things that make Bootstrap work. And those files are as follows. We need the core CSS. Custom styles for this template we don't actually need. You don't need these 2 lines. You don't need this. You don't need this. So actually, really all you need is the Bootstrap min CSS link. Okay, so let's get that. You can go ahead and just copy it. And we're going to set up our HTML document real quick. Of course, I need to do it correctly. We have head. We'll paste our link into here. And I'm actually going to save this now so it knows it's a HTML file. And that way it can fill in some stuff for me. And we're actually going to save this into a specific place. We're going to save it into that Bootstrap folder that you got out of the zip file. So we're going to go to Bootstrap. We're going to save this, and we're going to call it index.html. Super sweet. Okay, so we have linked to our Bootstrap min CSS files. Now, you'll notice that it's referencing a file path that's not going to be where yours is. If you look here, you'll notice that the reference for the Bootstrap min CSS file is not actually where yours is located. Yours is located just directly in the home folder. So you're going to change this to say css/bootstrap.min.css. Okay, that's what we want. Cool. All right, let's go back to the source code. All right, we actually need another thing for this to work, and it's jQuery. To get jQuery to work, you're going to copy this line down here, which is ajax.googleapis. This is where a file of jQuery is hosted by Google. This is a pretty standard way to import it into your project. And you'll notice it's contained at the bottom of the body. So that's where we're going to put it. I forgot to close my HTML tag. Okay, so those are really everything you need to kind of get Bootstrap loaded up into your file. We'll copy this too, but it's not necessary. This just, again, brings in, oh sorry, this is necessary, my bad. So this other file here, this references the JavaScript for Bootstrap, and you'll notice it's got the same folder problem that we had before, so we'll go ahead and fix that. Okay, so this is all you need to set up Bootstrap on your machine to get it working. We're going to go ahead and copy the rest that's in the header here, especially this charset thing. That, you know, depending on what you're going to do, that can be important, that might not be important. I like to just, whenever I work with Bootstrap, I like to just kind of copy everything that they don't say is irrelevant, because Bootstrap is always being updated. It's kind of, to be honest with you, it's kind of tricky to stay current with it because of the speed at which they update it. So we're going to keep these 3 meta tags in and call it that. Call it a day. Okay, cool. So we have a basic Bootstrap file. Let's save this. Let's load it up. Open it with Chrome because that's already open. And sure enough, nothing opens because, well, we don't have any content in our file here. If we wanted to put content, there we go, we have some content. But of course, Bootstrap doesn't really want you to just type words into here. When you put content into Bootstrap, you're using a specific system. You're using their very famous grid system, and we're going to look at that next. So let's go back to the template. Let's go back to the instruction page. I'm going to show you where to look at the documentation for this. So you want to go to where it says CSS, and we want to look at the grid system. Okay, so this is a lot of reading to do. You can read it. Go ahead and read it if you want. I'm going to kind of explain to you the bread and butter of what the grid system is all about. And you can learn way more about it just by reading it. But basically what Bootstrap does is it pretends the entire window is broken into 12 individual columns. So our entire window here, imagine it's broken into 12 columns. Each of these columns can be broken into rows. So you can put rows into columns. You could have 12 columns and 2 rows. You could have 6 columns or 2 columns and as many rows as you want. The only rule is that the number of columns you have, whether they're 1 width each or 8 width each or 4 width each, whatever number they are, it all has to add up to 12. So you could have 12 individual columns. You could have 3 columns that span a quarter, or you could have 3 columns that span a third of the screen each, 4 columns that span a quarter of the screen each. It's all up to you. It's how you want to lay it out. Now the beauty of all this is watch what happens when you resize the window. This is why Bootstrap is so powerful, because this works on your phone, your tablet, and your desktop. All right, so let's get some basic stuff down. If you kind of scroll down a little bit, this is the basic notation for how to get Bootstrap going. Everything is put into rows. So we're going to start by making ourselves a new row. Okay, and these are held in divs. So you give the div a class of row. And what this is doing is this is looking in the CSS file of Bootstrap for something called row, and it's putting it in there. It's putting all the CSS that Bootstrap has already written in for this div, which is good. Okay, the next thing we have to do is make another div. Okay, and in this div, it looks like we're going to want to try to put let's go for 2 columns for now. So if you go down to where this row is, it says col-mid.6. Col-md.-6. Great. Of course, remember to close your divs. And because in every row we need to add up to 12, of course we'll need another one. All right, now remember, you could, these numbers add up to 12, you could do something like this too. Six plus 3 plus 3, that also adds up to 12. So as long as it adds up to 12, you're in the clear. Okay, great. So here are our 2 columns. Now in between the div tags, that's where you put the content that you want to put in your column. So let's say column 1, column 2. Now these things could be just text, you could put image tags in here, you could do iframes for video, you can do anything you want. This is where all your content goes. So anything you want, that goes there. All right, save it. Let's check out what it looks like. Column 1, column 2. Doesn't seem to be working appropriately. Let's see why. Okay, so we actually delete these 2 dots here. That's just going to mess it up. So delete the 2 dots in your links to the Bootstrap min CSS and the JavaScript, and then we'll work. So there we go. Okay, now we can check to make sure Bootstrap is working appropriately if you resize the window, and the columns should stack on top of each other, just like that. Okay, there's not enough room to have them next to each other, so they stack on top. Thanks, Bootstrap. That's great. All right, super awesome. What if we want to add another row? Let's do that. So here's another row. And instead of doing 2 columns, let's do 3 columns. I'll give you a second to see if you can predict what we're going to write as the class if we want to do 3 columns. Go ahead and do that now. Have you taken a guess? If you guessed something like that, 3 times, that's good, because if we do this 3 times, 1, 2, our numbers add up to 12. 4 plus 4 plus 4. Let's save, let's refresh, and let's check it out. There we go. Hey, it all works great. Okay, and just to give you a little bit more of a visual too, let's give an ID to each one of these rows, and just do some CSS real quick. So let's do ID equals row 2, ID equals row 1. I want to show you just visually how this is working. So we're going to save this, we're going to do a new file, we need it to be a CSS file. So to reference the IDs, we do hashtag ID1, ID2, okay. And let's just change the background color of the first one to be red. Let's change the background color of the second one to be blue. Okay, we need to save the CSS file. We're going to call it overrides.css. We're going to put it right in the root file. Actually, we're going to put it in the CSS folder. And of course, since we've created the CSS file, we need to link to it as well. So right under the Bootstrap CSS link, let's link to CSS overrides.css. Okay. Save that and let's refresh. It doesn't look like it worked. I think we need to have this in quotes actually. Of course, I may just be lying to you all. Oh. No, I'm stupid. What really happened is this ID of row 1, not ID 1. Oh boy. That's what happens when you code early in the morning. Don't do that. All right, so clearly we have our 2 rows on top of each other. Here's red, here's blue. Now when you take the window and you compress it, look what's happening to the rows. Column 2 in row 1 is swinging underneath column 1 in row 1, and the other stuff is moving down. This is what makes Bootstrap so incredibly powerful, and this is why we're learning how to use it. Okay, that concludes the tutorial for part 1 of learning how to set up Bootstrap on your machine. At this point, you should be able to get it running. You should be able to make a couple columns and rows, and you should be able to have some sort of an idea of where to go from here. Next time, we'll look at how to add some more complex content to your page. Hope you enjoyed it and have fun.